Karen the Sergeant Part 2. Karen the Sergeant Part 1. TL. Dr. Arrogant Sergeant gets kicked out of the army after making her soldiers' lives a living hell. So to continue where we left off, Karen had tried to forge some important government documents but was caught red-handed. She was more or less let off with a warning. Despite this, it was somehow my fault that she got in trouble, and she was bound and determined to make my life miserable. In between all of this, we also received 2 new privates. I'll refer to them as Princess and Rockstar. More on them in a bit, but they ended up facing a good portion of Karen's wrath, with Princess being a major component in her downfall. Every chance she got, she would make petty insults towards me, usually about my appearance. I wasn't a small dude, but I'd never failed a PT test at this point. My apparent alcoholism. Again, I was a bit of a partier, but I never drank during the work week. And my lack of any organization in my arms room. While in my arms room, she had moved a lot of important documents I had around. I honestly didn't know where anything was that I needed. I kept quiet about most of what was going and pretended it didn't get me. This was mostly because we had a deployment coming up. I really wanted to be on it for a number of reasons, but the main one was because I never got to finish my first one. I had gotten injured on a mission and felt I needed to justify this and prove my worth. This didn't stop Karen from pulling her final gambit against me. It's ranged A for our M249 machine gunners. The weapon was not the greatest platform, but that didn't stop me from being the best shot in the company with one. I'm on the line in the middle of my quals when I get kicked in the boot by one of the NCOs running the range. He informs me that I needed to go back to the company and pull out weapons for people who needed range time. I was confused by this, as I had literally issued all of the M249s out that we had in stock. I then asked if I could finish my quals and was told I was needed back immediately. As I'm clearing the range, the main NCO was wondering why I was being cleared early and then reprimanded the NCO who pulled me. When I asked if I could go back on the range to finish, I was told I couldn't. They'd already moved past the point I was on. Anger rising. I go to the truck I was told to go to and was told by the operators to wait. Apparently, they were instructed to wait for the soldiers on the line so they could transport them back to the company. It took 30 minutes for the line to finish, but then the driver received a call from the company asking why I wasn't back yet. We then left without the other gunners. They had to wait for the truck to return. Anger fermenting. We get back to the company and I'm told by the Shield, Big Sis, and Karen that I needed to draw out the M4s and M16s for the range. While the range I was on was strictly for machine guns, there was another daily range ran by a random company on Fort Hood that did regular rifle quals. As I'm opening the arms room, I'm doing my best to remain civil as Big Sis asked how I shot. I told her they pulled me off the range before I had a chance to finish. She kind of laughs a bit and I chuckle with her, but Karen had to ruin the moment. Karen said in a sternly smug tone, "Well, when you're finished here, you can go back and do it all over again." Quote, full F meltdown. I yelled at Karen that I wasn't going back. I was done. Karen tried to get a word in, but Big Sis managed to separate us while the Shield had a few words with me. He understood the frustration but reminded me that I needed quals before the deployment. The man had gone to bat for me a lot in the past year and I honestly didn't want to let him down. He was an amazing mentor. As I opened the arms room door, though, Karen had snuck in behind me. After I input my code, I heard a shrill, "What the F?" 360 Entertainment. Feeling fairly beaten and defeated, I replied, "I don't know. Sergeant, drop." "Right F now. Just drop." I scream back, "I am not F-dropping." She gets scared and starts backing herself into a corner. At that moment, I didn't see the condescending woman who'd made it her mission to make my life hell. All I saw was a scared bully. A former friend turned scared tormentor. I attempted to make my way for the door, but she started to desperately call for the shield and Big Sis to rescue her. They came in and of course Karen was trying to spin this in her favor, but they overheard her shouting first again, "I'm not a small guy, plus I'm still wearing all of my body armor." Thinking back, her fear was justified. Big Sis sat me down in my arms room while the shield and Karen went up front. We had a heart-to-heart, and as it turns out she was aware of the abuse and so was the shield. A lot of people had been complaining about her, but there still wasn't much that could be done at the time. She then told me that since this was Friday, they'd handle the situation Monday. I still had to go back to the range, but was told we'd talk more later. Funnily enough, when I returned to the range, the NCOs running it told I had qualified already. Apparently I shot so well for the few rounds I made that I had the bare minimum to earn marksman. Well, I am a perfectionist and wanted to try again. I scored expert. After weapons cleaning, I didn't see Karen around for the rest of the day. Big Sis told me that she claimed to have important work to do, but the rumor was she took off for Austin. She didn't even show up for final formation, which was weird. That night I went to JB's for a house party with Princess, Rockstar, and a bunch of others. We got back pretty late and I went to my room to continue the party with a few others and put a movie on around 2 a.m. Passing out shortly after, around 6:30 a.m. On Saturday I was awoken by loud knocking. I answered and there's Karen, ready to give me the 5th degree for not answering her text messages. Apparently, she'd been sending out text messages since 0530. She barged into my room demanding to know why it wasn't clean. Again, I'd partied the night before and told her as such. She demanded that I pull all of the furniture out and do a thorough deep cleaning and that she would be back later. She also forbade me from leaving. Reminder, this was Saturday. We had nothing scheduled and it was an off day for our company. After she left, I checked on Princess and Rockstar. Apparently she did the same thing with them. I contacted JB immediately. He told me she was just at his house and tried the same stunt, but it didn't work. Mamasaurus had chased her off and threatened to call the MPs if she didn't leave the property. JB had already notified Big Sis, who was livid. Big Sis then told us not to worry. With that said, Rockstar and Princess went about what they had planned. I then went about cleaning up the garbage in my room, followed by a relaxing day of day drinking and video games. Around 1000 hours, 10 a.m., we get a call from Karen ordering us to come down to the supply office. She apparently had our monthly counselings. We head down and Karen has a look on her face like sour milk was used in her espresso. Princess and Rockstar sign theirs with little fuss. Then it's my turn. I sign my monthly counseling but then she pulls out an additional counseling. This one for what happened yesterday. It stated how I acted unprofessionally and that I was to face multiple punishments that made very little sense. The biggest one was that any perceived authority I was also to answer directly to Princess, as she would become my direct supervisor and that I would be on barracks restriction. Also, all of my personal belongings, including my computer and school books, were to be removed. I looked up after reading it and I was then told by Karen that she was going to do everything in her power to make sure I would not go on the deployment. She then informed me that if I somehow made it on the deployment, she would personally make sure I lost rank. I looked her dead in the eyes and ripped up the counseling. I then informed her that I would make it on the deployment solely despite her and that she would get hers. We then entered into a shouting match. Luckily, Princess was there to separate us somewhat and kept me somewhat calm on our way back to the barracks. Princess had contacted Big Sis and JB after we got back to our rooms and told them what Karen tried to do. Throughout all of this, the shield had been notified of the previous room inspections and contacted Karen. Karen told him that she had every right to do a health and welfare on her soldiers, but the shield apparently wasn't happy with that answer and accused her of seeking revenge. Karen did not deny this. The Shield proceeded to inform her that the situation would be handled on Monday. I'm still fuming by Monday, but I keep my mouth shut. Karen doesn't stay quiet though, peppering her remarks towards me and JB specifically with various insults. All of this was heard by both Big Sis and the Paladin. After conducting motor pool maintenance, the Shield pulled everyone aside and informed us that no retribution would be taken, which surprised me, but that I would only answer to Karen if business required it. I would also still be deploying with the company, rank and check, but I would answer to another sergeant, who I'll refer to as Little Sis. We all agreed to this. In the time before our deployment, I did my best to maintain distance with Karen, who was still openly hostile towards me when we had to work together. Meanwhile, I had occasionally received phone calls at odd hours from numbers I didn't know. I somewhat recognized the voices and matched the numbers up with our phone list and found them to match a few sergeants within our brigade. I brought this up to Big Sis and Little Sis, and those same sergeants were ordered to leave me alone. During one particular combatives day, Army MMA pretty much, I was called out by one of them and we went at it. While he has me in an armbar, he began telling me, "Not as easy and beating up the woman, is it?" Quote. I then reversed the armbar on him and put my own on. I cranked on that arm so hard I'm surprised it didn't break. As soon as he tapped out, I looked him in the eyes and told him this was easier. I found out later Karen was telling everyone in her clique that I attacked her. Fast forward a bit and Karen is officially in the advance party for deployment. Basically, her and several select NCOs had been flown to the area we were to take over and set up shop. A few weeks later our trip began. We landed in Kuwait, but that's when our first snag happened. Most of the higher-ups, including the brigade commander and the command sergeant major, made their flights. But for whatever reason all of the lower enlisted, including myself, Rockstar, and Princess, were stranded in Kuwait. It took the rest of the company almost 2 weeks to catch a flight into the country. Meanwhile, Karen was slowly starting to get found out for how truly lazy she was. I mentioned this in my previous post about Karen, but I'll state it again. She quite literally pawned all of her work on JB. She even pawned training Princess and Rockstar off on JB, who masterfully had them operating to his standard. Of course, Karen took all of the credit for training them, but when it came time for them to work, she'd always bemoan how lazy and incompetent they were to anyone who'd listen, and how she'd always have to do all of their work. This came back to bite her in several ways. For one, JB wasn't on the deployment. The Shield wanted to bring him but couldn't justify leaving a sergeant in place of a specialist. Second, without JB or the others to pawn work on, she had no idea how to set anything up or who to contact to make orders through. Upon arrival in Iraq, Princess and Rockstar had to hit the ground running. It didn't take long for Princess to have the shop set up, with Karen taking credit, of course. After I was settled, I set about conducting my duties. Apart from remaining as the armorer, I was given several additional duties, including housing, maintenance, backup mechanic, and few others I don't remember. This was almost 10.5 years ago after all. Meanwhile, Karen could barely manage her own office, basically relying on all of the connections Princess had made. She eventually lucked out though when one of Princess's uncles turned out to be the commander of a supply company. In fact, a lot of her family were there in the neighboring camps. She proceeded to use Princess to her advantage to make several connections. Eventually, our company was up and running. When it came time to return any favors, Karen was almost unwilling to help. One such favor was Karen releasing Princess to spend time with her uncle. After inviting Princess to several family BBQs and being told no, Uncle showed up at Karen's office. He demanded to know why she wouldn't release Princess. Karen tried pulling the "she's my soldier and I need her" card, but Uncle wasn't having it. Princess had told him everything about Karen. Uncle apparently leaned in really close to Karen and said, "You ask all of these favors of me, but yet when I ask a favor you say no? What do you think will happen if I tell the rest of the family what's going on here?" Karen began releasing Princess to spend time with her family. Now comes the downfall. Since anyone under the rank of E8 for enlisted, or O6 for officer, had to have a roommate, she tried making Wheels her roommate. This didn't fly though with a Shield or Big Sis. Instead, Little Sis became her roommate. Initially this didn't stop Karen. Instead, Wheels started spending the night and everyone slowly started finding out just how toxic their relationship was. Their constant fighting caused the Shield to step in and put out orders stating we could not be in another soldier's room after a certain time. Karen did not think this applied to her at first and still had Wheels over until Big Sis stepped in again and gave her a warning. Karen was officially on thin ice. Then the glorious moment finally arrived, which was half karma, half pro-revenge, all satisfying. About a week after the order was put out, Princess saw Wheels acting suspiciously. As she and several others were breaking for the night, she saw Wheels running from behind several storage containers and into Karen's room. Princess went to Big Sis and told her what she saw. The moment had arrived and Big Sis knew it. Big Sis went to the Shield, who then informed Wheels' platoon sergeant. The Shield then set up a chair outside of Karen's room in a position where he could see everything, but no one could see him. It didn't take long before Wheels poked her head out of the door to check for anyone watching. Wheels then got on her stomach and sniper crawled all the way to her room. Having enough evidence, the Shield then informed Big Sis and Wheels' platoon sergeant of the situation, then told them to wait 10 minutes before bringing Karen and Wheels to him. When Wheels was brought in, she acted like she had been asleep, but of course the Shield knew better. He asked them what was up and they denied everything until the Shield pointed out all of the evidence against them. That's when Karen said it. She admitted to being in a relationship with Wheels. As stated, this was before Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, but for whatever reason Karen thought this would get her off. Wheels, however, was left speechless. While our unit was fairly lenient, it was still outright foolish to openly admit you were gay. The Shield then informed them that they'd need to meet with the brigade command sergeant major in the morning. The next morning they had their meeting and the CSM flipped at the news. While in the office, the CSM yelled loud enough to shake the paper-thin walls, "You mean to tell me my F driver is gay?" And separation paperwork was started for both. A replacement within the company for Karen was found and Karen was charged with training her. Initially Karen treated her replacement like just another subordinate, but that was stopped pretty quickly by Big Sis and Little Sis. After this, all Karen did at work was watch Brazilian soap operas on her work computer. Princess and Rockstar had to train the replacement. While Karen's army career was mostly over at this point, she managed to get the last laugh. She sent out an email that contained several pictures of almost every gay and lesbian soldier in our unit. The ones caught lost their careers due to this, but Karen was still the last to leave. She wasn't allowed to leave the country until her replacement was ready. As a last FU to her, Little Sis constantly told the Shield that the replacements still hadn't quite gotten the hang of things, but eventually relented. After making it back to Fort Hood, Karen had to deal with JB, who'd been made the rear detachment supply sergeant. She attempted to circumvent him several times, but JB and the rear detachment commander repeatedly put a stop to that. Her reign was over. I don't know what happened to Karen and never cared to follow up. I eventually went on to vindicate myself in the eyes of everyone. I was bad-mouthed. Heck, I even became a low-key asset as I was able to get items like new AC units and new mattresses for Our barracks rooms, everything eventually turned out well for Big Sis. She has a kid now and is legally married to Little Sis, who still serves. I talk to them from time to time. I've lost contact with Princess, but she also had a kid. There was a bit of a scandal surrounding this that I might cover in a later post. Maybe. Rockstar is still doing good. Last I heard, he has a big tech job and is jacked now. This sounds more like a story of complete fucking incompetence by your armed forces. I'm mixed on feelings. Hate that her sexuality was the tool used for her downfall. But she damn well deserved the fall. I'm glad Big Sis and Little Sis had a happy ending though. Oh wow, what a story. This also belongs in our military stories in our fuckery university. I can't believe she fucked over the entire LGBT community in the deployment. Out of spite. Given the anti-gay environment, I would have thought she would at least have their backs. I am so confused. What did I just read? So out of curiosity, what was the actual ProRevenge? This lady made your lives hell for what sounds like months or years with no real consequences. And when she was finally told she had to leave, it took months. She got to sit there watching TV. And took a bunch of innocents down with her. Where the fuck was the 1SG in all of this? No one but a commander can restrict soldiers to the barracks, on post, etc. There's too many. This was her last chances. As I opened the arms room door though, Karen had snuck in behind me. After I input my code, I heard a shrill, "What the F?" 360 Entertainment. Feeling fairly beaten and defeated, I replied, "I don't know. Sergeant, drop. Right F now. Just drop." I scream back, "I am not F dropping." She gets scared and starts backing herself into a corner. At that moment I didn't see the condescending woman who'd made it her mission to make my life hell. All I saw was a scared bully. A former friend turned scared tormentor. I attempted to make my way for the door, but she started to desperately call for the shield and Big Sis to rescue her. They came in and of course Karen was trying to spin this in her favor, but they overheard her shouting first again, "I'm not a small guy, plus I'm still wearing all of my body armor." Thinking back, her fear was justified. I do not understand. Was Karen locked in the room with you once you input your code because she had snuck in? As someone who lived in the barracks for a few years, this story made my blood boil. Really surprised Karen didn't catch an ass beating. This seems like letting a complete black hole individual run an office for a long time, making everyone's efforts harder. And it was known, but nothing was done. WTF. The Karen should have been busted down for being an utter puss almost immediately. Why, as peers or a superior, would you ever tolerate that? I feel bad that Wheels got kicked out also, and that it came to that. Props to anyone who reads this without getting cancer.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.